Hi everyone, this is Chris from Dora Hacks. It's great to be here to host the first Appchain Day Hong Kong panelist. First of all, welcome all of the four speakers from four emerging app chain in the Web3 right now. And I would like to invite them to introduce them first. Yeah, you can start.
Hello everyone, I'm Ben, CTO of Tabi. I was in the Web2 industry for 6 years and developed several things like operating system based on Android x86 and also a gaming tool that's on Google Play with 10 million downloads. And then I entered Web3 and co-founded the Web3 security company, Go Plus. Then I co-founded Tabi and worked as CTO of Tabi.
Hi guys, my name is Justin. I'm on the Injective business team over here. More specifically, I help lead all ecosystem development, as you can see from my profile. Injective, if you're not familiar, is a blockchain built for finance. Very excited here to talk a little bit more about how Injective has leveraged our own infrastructure to help push out the Appchain narrative as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jess. I'm the CMO of Hooked Protocol. Our mission is to bring the next billion people onto Web3 by providing them a very easy-to-use, intuitive educational network. So we're building one of the biggest entertainment network to educate people on what Web3 is about and then bring them on board into this wonderful world. And previously, I worked in certain Silicon Valley big tech company. I'm working on apps and solutions that's facing this scale of people, like we're talking about billions, working with on suite of with the luxury of a big house of top minds in Silicon Valley and developers, and then realizing there's a huge gap in between this world. So I'm quite excited to see what we can do as a bridge between the talents and knowledge in this field.
Hey, my name is Denis. I lead developer experience at ZetaChain. ZetaChain is an omni-chain platform focused on interoperability. It allows developers to build contracts that can be called from any chain. And before that, I've been contributing to the Cosmos ecosystem, actually creating tooling for building app chains. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's jump to the very first questions for today. So some of you guys spin up the chain from the very beginning, like that chain, to serve some of the specific purpose. Some of the projects like Injective, like Tabi, used to, also Hooked, used to not like launched as a chain at the very beginning, but then decide to spin up their own infrastructure to support the future functions. So like what made you guys to make the decision on spin up your own solvent chains? Yeah.
Well, I think we are not just a sovereign chain. Actually, we can be regarded as a Appchain deployment protocol, though we are L1, but we also have that Appchain deployment protocol. First, we are an NFT marketplace and with several self-incubated games, and we find that we may have our own chain, then maybe we can achieve more functionalities and higher customizability. When we talk with some game developers, then we thought it is very good to have a protocol that to let everybody have the services built on blockchain. So we have our solution named Tabi. Itself is a L1, but not just L1, because inside Tabi, everything, every chain or subnet, we can call it subnet. Actually, we name them as services, and the services are just in parallel, and they use some parallel consensus. So we first to have a very fast and consensus reaching mechanism, and secondly, every service they have enough sovereignty. For example, if you are gonna trying to we have a feature named AnyVM compatibility, which means you can have projects from Ethereum or Solana. You can just migrate directly to Tabi. And furthermore, actually for Web2 developers, they are not that familiar with those Web3 stacks. So basically, they can define that execution environment inside the execution module. So basically, we have very good compatibility for them. And then for developers, if they have this kind of flexibility to develop everything with the language and framework they are familiar with, but not limited to something like Solidity or Rust, and then I think it will bring open the new gate for the Web3, because you have a very good potential to attract the developer from Web2. That's the reason we believe we should have some mechanism to deploy, help them to deploy their own app chains.
Well, I can talk about ZetaChain. The reason why I think ZetaChain decided to be its own L1 and an app chain is because of scalability issues. So like from the very beginning, we realized that the number of transactions is going to be pretty high, and it's important for us to provide the most scalable solutions for the dApps deploying on ZetaChain. So I think when people say app chains, they kind of almost automatically think about custom modules and maybe permissioned contracts, but I don't think that's the case. So you can be a general purpose platform and still be an app chain if you're focused and if you know exactly what you're providing. So if you're a general purpose EVM blockchain, that's not as exciting, and I don't think that constitutes as a valid app chain, unless you have some features that are unique to your chain that makes it easier for applications to decide, okay, I'm going to build on that. So for ZetaChain, that's definitely interoperability, right? If you want your dApp not only to be connected to other Cosmos chains or dApps deployed on Cosmos chains through IBC, but you want your dApp to be automatically compatible with Bitcoin, you want to be able to accept input from Ethereum, from BSC, and from potentially other chains, that's when you make a decision kind of and go with ZetaChain. And I think it was a very smart decision because we're seeing hundreds of transactions per block on ZetaChain, and the fact that we have our own token for fees makes it much cheaper for applications and users to actually interact and move value between blockchains compared to if we deploy it on someone else's chain. So yeah, it's also important because the infrastructure that facilitates interoperability actually required us to write custom modules that are deeply integrated into the blockchain, right? So it's not a contract running in a VM, which is not bad. It's just like the complexity might be a bit on the kind of easier side compared to when you're writing modules in Go that sit directly in on the consensus layer, and yeah, I mean there are a bunch of reasons, but those are off the top of my head.
I'm gonna piggyback off of what Denis and Ben was just saying. Essentially, when we started off Injective, before the Appchain narrative in 2022 even began, we actually started building it in 2021. And the whole point being was the lack of infrastructure. And what we really found out the issue is that there's no, when you're launching a project or an Appchain, for example, we always go back to the keyword liquidity. And we realized that there's a lack of liquidity in the market. It's concentrated mostly in other markets, not named Cosmos. So when we launched our Appchain, the whole point was being, how can we help projects, developers find liquidity on a shared layer so that when they do deploy on an app chain, things are easy. They focus solely on the back end. They don't have to worry about, let's go talk to this institution to gain liquidity. Let's talk to this LP to gain liquidity. So the first thing that we did as a chain was actually create something called, what we call an on-chain order book. So it's very much similar to what you guys are familiar with in the traditional market, when instead of trading against a counterparty that's the AMM solution, you're trading against institutions that's been integrated with Injective. And at this point, in current time, I think we're pushing almost 40 institutions that's actively making and taking the market for us. that, in my opinion, is the most important layer of infrastructure on Injective. Because let's say today you're building a lending protocol. You have to think about, where do I go liquidate my assets? What happens if, when I'm liquidating my assets, the asset prices actually move? Or in the EVM environment, what happens if I have MEV? There's price slippages that I have to account for. These are all accounted for on our on-chain order book, and you don't have to worry about that at all. All you have to do is integrate with our exchange module. Going back to what Denis was saying, these modules are important for Appchains, and we've launched multiple modules, not named the exchange module, where you integrate the on-chain order book, the binary options module, where fairly intuitive, you can create up and down or yes or no markets using a chain. Or even recently this year, at the start of this year, we launched something called the permissions module, something to tag along, something to really help builders who's interested diving into the real-world asset world. For us, these are all things that Injective has tried to lay out across our foundation so that when builders do come onto us, they can actually just grab the plug-and-play modules, deploy it, and within a matter of days, you have an up and running project. So you don't have to build from scratch from 0 to 100, because that might take months, if not years, for some projects to do.
Yeah, to piggyback on all of these wonderful points the gentleman's brought up, we've focused on a slightly different side that this modularity and interoperability would bring to us, while you focus on a very vertical of DeFi and lending and helping developers and projects to bootstrap liquidity. We focus on the customer experience side, which is also one of the highlights that Appchain can bring to us, because we're looking to onboard people who are previously not familiar to Web3. The initial step is super important. Like, how do you get your first wallet? How do you weather through all of this a dog forest of transitioning from a Web 2 context into Web 3? So we're basically, while we're building a D app, that's what we're initially known for, we already have building a app chain in mind, because if we want to gather the attention of the masses that's like currently out there not using our any of the Web3 solutions, we need multiple apps like some of the learn to earn very successful D app attempts. So our final mission is to empower devs communities and projects who wanted to build products like ours that attracts the mass traffic onto the platform through gamify and entertaining experiences. So for us, we can dial up and down the different importance while we go ahead on our app chain building, right? Maybe for lending or DEX protocols, you need to really focus on security, and you will dial up that element. And for us, we will dial up some other stuff. For example, not everything has to be on chain. So to smoothen out some of the initial onboarding experiences, we might move some of the experiences off chain, and we could share the sharing infrastructure with different projects with similar needs in terms of, for example, providing a DIDs. We already have a plug-and-play solution. We can help projects previously without a system in place to get them up to speed and building up on token-based educational proof of education record on chain. So that's what we have in mind. Is less of a pivot, but more of hitting a milestone. So last year we really focused on building those successful D apps first to basically show a proof of concept that, hey, we successfully launched last year 3 apps that attract over 3 mil monthly active users at the peak, and right now we're maintaining them at 100K around the globe. So there's a network effect there we can achieve, and by opening up our infrastructure solutions, we want to bring more builders, and then we can share our flywheel solution of how to grow a user space, how to build a community, how do you sustain a loyal community based on the topic of learning and progressing in Web3.
Thank you, guys. So next questions. During the process of developing your own infrastructure and chain, like what type of the benefits that developers or users that I can enjoy comparing with it's a like single app for either user to be adopted or working with other DApps for the integration. Yeah, love to.
I would just give an example like Ethereum. It's cool to say we have a world computer, but actually everybody app developer, they are competing with the same computational resource and you have to pay for it. Then secondly, maybe it has some kind of blockchain data structure which is not very suitable. Like for us, we mainly focused on gaming. So like Merkle Trade, they're not efficient for very high efficiency. So if the developer can launch their chain, their dApps on a blockchain which can be customized, then I think it will be very great for them. Another important point is that if the developer can have this in kind of way, actually we name this paradigm as freestyle development. And if they can have this flexibility, then the entry barrier for the user side will be lowered significantly because you can remove some common concepts in the blockchain industry like wallets, seed phrases, gas. I think all of you know that it is very troublesome for users to understand. There are no such things in Web2. So by this kind of customizability and modularity, we think Appchain it can solve many problems, both for developers and users.
I think the fact that Zeta Chain is an app chain doesn't directly affect developers because what they see is a regular EVM that they are already familiar with. So like from their point of view, it's not much of a difference, which I think is a good thing. Where it really made a difference is in the underlying machinery that makes it all work because every transaction that goes through Zeta Chain between, let's say, Ethereum and Bitcoin, validators vote on each transaction, and it's a lot of steps that are involved. And if we didn't have an app chain, we would have to execute all of them on someone else's app chain in a contract, which is very expensive and is just not efficient, right? Like the things that you do every single block hundreds of times over, you want to move it as closer to the metal as possible, and metal in this case is a consensus layer with Cosmos SDK modules. So that's what we did, and I think at the end of the day, of course, it kind of indirectly impacted developer experience because what they're getting is fast cross-chain transactions. They're getting a familiar API that they already know how to use, right? So we hid all the complexity that is involved in blockchain interoperability, and we all know that there's a lot of complexity involved in that, right? Trying to kind of connect very different state machines and ensuring that the value transfers seamlessly. So I think this abstracting away the underlying machinery, almost abstracting away the fact that there is a chain behind all of this for end users. That's what we got. And one last thing I think is we don't necessarily rely on smart contracts being deployed on other chains, and this is also something that we kind of get from being able to create an architecture without any real constraints, right? We can write whatever we want. It's going to fit in the app chain paradigm because you can implement anything you want, right? So we made some good architectural decisions in terms of how chains are interacting with each other, and it saves time and gas for application developers, which I think is super important.
I think the most important thing about working with Injective as an app chain is from the onboarding process to the execution process, you get the benefit of really having the full experience of moving, in a way, financials from chain to chain. I think interoperability obviously is very important in Cosmos through IBC, but we wanted to take a step even further because onboarding users is just as important as what I mentioned just now, the execution layer, when you don't want to suffer from price slippages and whatnot. So what we did as a chain was actually look into the onboarding process and really create ways that we can onboard users from different environments. So this could be as simple as last month we released the Ionic upgrade for our chain bridge. What that means is you can bridge in from multiple chains through one user interface itself. So that could be Solana, that could be any chain from Cosmos, that could be from Ethereum, Polygon, whatever chain you name it, we have a bridge that's supporting it. In the back end, you realize that you're not actually actively choosing which bridge you're using as if you were on any other chain. Instead, our backend solution would optimize the best chain that you, the best bridge that you should be bridging your funds from, and then calculating the lowest gas fees that attaches with it. On top of that, we obviously understand as well, like a lot of the liquidity doesn't just sit on Cosmos, it sits on Ethereum, it sits on Solana. So what we've done is we've integrated with wallets such as MetaMask, which to my knowledge, very few, if not no chains on Cosmos has done, and we've altered the signature scheme on MetaMask so that when you're coming in from Ethereum and you're interacting with MetaMask, you want to bridge your funds to Injective, you don't have to switch any chains. It actually just falls under the Ethereum chain itself, and then you can bridge it over, still benefiting from low gas fees. The last thing I wanted to say is gas fee compressions on chain. Obviously, when you're working with any of the chains, just like with everyone here, you're really benefiting from the low gas fees. But we wanted to take a step even further to make sure that it becomes practically zero, so that you're able to make multiple transactions a day without having to worry about that $10, that $15 every time that you're paying. What that allows us to do in our grand theory is in a financial market, theoretically, you're going on the street, you're paying for a bottle of water, you're buying lunch. Every time, practically, there's no transaction fee, and you don't think about it. That's what we're trying to replicate on Injective. So right now, you can make 1,000 transactions on Injective. Let's say you're going to an NFT marketplace. You make 1,000 purchases. You're paying $0.1 for gas fees in total. And what we've done with that is we've altered the gas compression from 500 million MS to 160 million MS. And so that now every app, every user really thinks that when I'm trading on Injective, let's say I have one Injective, that will practically hold you for your whole lifetime as long as you keep trading and you keep using it. So I think that's a key difference on top of what the user experience is like on an app chain such as Injective.
Yeah, 100% echo on your point of user experience when it comes to building our own app chain. And for us, it's important in another context, right? Because a lot of people don't really know what gas fee is when they first get on our system. They will log in with their Facebook and Google, and they find out that when they move their assets in game around, and there is like suddenly a gas fee, and then we have to educate them what it is. So in the very beginning, we will cover that cost, and what building our own app chain allows us to do is to lower that cost for us, so the operation cost, and then we can share it around with many different DApps that's building on our system, so that to smoothen out the experiences for the users, and also internally behind the scene, there will also to lower our operational costs. And on the other hand, on the experience side, I want to highlight what Appchains allows us to do is to have a much broader context of what our what individual apps can do. So, for example, imagine, I guess all of you know what Alipay or Alibaba is, and what your actions in one app, or if, for example, if I pay for a coffee here, and then in Taobao or Shenyu, they would reflect your taste, and then your scores, whatever, would apply to the other context. And that magical experience of cross-contextual experience that people are familiar with within Web 2 is currently missing in Web 3. Everything is very built in silo, and for now, like even transaction is not that smooth, even though it's in the same context. So for us, what we could do is, because we're education-based, one of the magical aha moment is like, for example, if I fulfill 10 hours of gamified learning on NFT, then you already will be granted this your unique NFT token, and then you can use it to unlock some other fun experiences in another DApp that's also building on our chain, using your own credentials. Just imagine that your college education certificate could allow you to get a free coffee at Starbucks the next day. So a lot of this new way of earning your credentials and applying it in different contexts within our Appchain system is quite exciting to us, and that's what we're currently building so far.
Yeah, time flies. I think we have like time for one last questions. Is there any advice from you guys for the developers in the future who want to build their own app chain, or like what type of the teams you think they should not pursue the app chain pathway? Yeah.
I'm not going to dive into what teams they shouldn't pursue. I'll dive into the things and the opportunities that I feel like are most important. And I think the key word, like I was saying, on top of liquidity is always connectability. So how are you being connected to other ecosystems? How are you being connected to other chains? I think that's the most important thing that people, when starting to develop their own app chain, must think about. For example, from Injective's perspective, a year ago, we started realizing that within the Cosmos ecosystem, everything is great, everything is cheap, everything moves fast, but we also want to start expanding into other ecosystems. And how we do it by that is we decided to launch something called in EVM and in SVM. What essentially that means, as the name entails, is you get projects from EVM and from SVM to deploy natively, or I guess, onto a rollup chain itself that is connected to the main chain itself. And what that does is, over time, you're expanding the amount of builders and the reach that you really have as an app chain, so that over time you get people from Ethereum Solidity builders or Rust builders from Solana to really get familiar with the way Injective works, get familiar with the infrastructure that Injective has built and laid the foundation upon, and take it a step further to expand onto the native chain. So I would say, to answer your question, the most important thing is think about who you're connecting to and how you can expand your reach as much as possible, so that you are pushing your app chain and gaining users from any environment as quickly and as efficient as you can.
I think app chains are, the idea of app chains is not for every project, and there are definitely pros and cons. The advantages, obviously, we've heard about this already, are governance, and you can make your own decisions and utility of the token. But at the same time, you need to worry about actually building your protocol so that it's not a carbon copy of an existing project just with name changed, right? You need to worry about chain upgrades, about creating a community of validators, community of users, right? Because if you build an existing chain, you kind of inherit the marketing and the community and the culture, where when you're building it yourself, that's really on you. And it's also important to understand that you are in charge of the security of your network, right? And it has to be somehow correlated with the amount of value that your chain stores. You can't have a tiny chain with a lot of value locked into it. That's not secure, and that's up to you now. So there are a lot of challenges that you have to overcome, but in the end, what you get is a completely sovereign, if that's what you want, a completely sovereign application that doesn't depend on anyone. And right now, there are already good solutions for the problems I mentioned, right? You don't necessarily have to be 100% sovereign. You can do mesh security, right? You can have your own token, but at the same time inherit security from projects that provide it through shared security, through solutions like EigenLayer that some projects are already connecting to Cosmos. So yeah, it really is becoming this kind of a Lego thing where you build your own chain from very, very different components and arrange it in a way that really suits your application.
Yeah, I totally agree that building an app chain is not for every project. It really depends on what goals you're trying to serve there, because there are so many chains out there already. Like this whole bull market narrative is basically on chains fighting for developers' resources, and that's definitely one of the challenges that we see, is like how to bootstrap your own devs community. Because for us, what we're really good at is bootstrapping traffic and getting attention from the consumer side. So we have a big community through our different channels and our different DApps that come in. But for us, building a devs community that got excited on this one very specific vertical of onboarding users from Web 2 or people who are not familiar with the context is a very small subset, I would say, but also a very important task. But how do you right now when devs resources is such a scarcity, every single big layer 1, layer 2, all the rollups are fighting for the resources. Like, how do you build a community that really subscribe to your mission and will stick together and then build experiences that would not only thrive on their own, but also, support each other, grow a network effect is something that we're figuring out, and it's a very interesting challenge.
Well, I think they have very comprehensive advices. So the only advice I will give here is maybe start to build your own chain from scratch is not a good choice. So maybe just choose some solutions like Arbitrum Orbit or Tabi or whatever it is. You just based upon your business demands, and that's all.
I think what we can wrap up here. Thanks everyone for sharing some of the really good insights. And if you want to spin up your app chain and you think it's hard to bootstrap your developer communities, reach out to DoraHawks. We are happy to support you guys. Yeah, thank you guys very much.